Chapter 1. The day Evelyn Hart turned 23. Nobody remembered. The Hart mansion glittered with golden lights as guests gathered to celebrate Amelia Hart's birthday. Laughter echoed through the ballroom while Evelyn stood alone near the entrance, watching the adopted daughter receive all the love that once belonged to her. 15 years ago, Amelia had supposedly saved her from drowning, and ever since then, the same sentence followed Evelyn everywhere. Without Amelia, you'd be dead. Whenever Amelia cried, Evelyn was blamed. Whenever Amelia failed, Evelyn was accused. Whenever Amelia wanted something, Evelyn was expected to give it up. Even Daniel, the man who once promised to marry her, now stood beside Amelia with eyes full of affection. When he handed Amelia a diamond bracelet identical to the one Evelyn had admired months ago, something inside her cracked. Then a crystal vase shattered nearby. Amelia stood closest to it, but before anyone could speak, Richard Hart pointed at Evelyn. "What did you do now?" The accusation was automatic. Habitual, cruel, Evelyn denied it, but nobody listened. Amelia lowered her head and whispered that it was probably an accident. Yet her trembling voice only made everyone glare harder at Evelyn. Richard ordered her to the attic. At 23 years old, she was still treated like a troublesome child. As she climbed the stairs, she heard laughter resume behind her. The celebration continued without interruption. Nobody followed her. Nobody remembered it was her birthday, too. The attic smelled of dust and forgotten things. Evelyn sat alone while music and laughter drifted upward through the floorboards. The pain in her chest felt familiar. For years, she had begged for scraps of affection from people who never truly chose her. Every achievement was ignored. Every effort is dismissed, every hurt explained away with the same words. Without Amelia, you'd be dead. Hours passed before she wandered deeper into the attic. A loose floorboard caught her attention. Beneath it sat an old wooden chest containing a black leather book marked with a silver moon wrapped in thorns. Curious, she opened it. The pages contained stories of people betrayed by those they loved most. One tale described a woman falsely accused of murder who discovered a spell capable of revealing every hidden truth. The woman was proven innocent, but she died soon afterward. At the bottom of the page, a sentence chilled Evelyn's blood. Truth returned her honor, but not her life. She turned the page and found a parchment titled The Revelation Spell. The instructions were simple: blood, voice, consent. In exchange, every lie surrounding the caster would be exposed. The cost was the caster's remaining years. Evelyn almost laughed. What years? What life? Her family had already taken everything from her except her heartbeat. A splinter pierced her finger. A drop of blood appeared. Before she could think twice, she pressed it against the parchment. The blood vanished instantly. The attic became unnaturally silent. Then she heard Amelia laughing downstairs. Something inside her finally broke. Evelyn lowered her eyes and began reading the spell aloud. Chapter 3. Evelyn woke the next morning with a pounding headache and dried blood beneath her nose. She barely remembered falling asleep. When she entered the dining room, nobody greeted her. Her parents discussed business. Lucas scrolled through his phone, and Daniel sat beside Amelia. It was as if she didn't exist. Then Amelia suddenly froze. Her expression changed from cheerful to confused. "Wait," she murmured. Everyone looked at her. Amelia blinked. "Yesterday wasn't just my birthday." Silence filled the room. Richard lowered his newspaper. Catherine's coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. Lucas looked up. Daniel frowned. Amelia swallowed. It was Evelyn's birthday, too. The room became painfully quiet. Nobody had remembered, not one of them. For the first time in years, guilt appeared on their faces. Tiny, weak, barely noticeable. But it was there. Evelyn watched them struggle to avoid her eyes. Nobody apologized. Nobody admitted fault. Yet the truth had surfaced anyway. Later that afternoon, another nosebleed stained her sleeve. She stared at the blood and remembered the warning in the book. The caster shall pay with their remaining years. Fear twisted inside her stomach, but she pushed it away. If the truth was finally coming to light, maybe the price would be worth it. Chapter 4. 3 days later, Catherine Hart opened an old jewelry box and found a silver necklace she'd spent years blaming Evelyn for stealing. The necklace had disappeared when Amelia was 16. Amelia cried and claimed Evelyn took it out of jealousy. Richard punished her. Lucas called her a thief. Daniel said he was disappointed. Evelyn spent months trying to prove her innocence. Nobody listened. Now the necklace sat hidden beneath Amelia's keepsakes. Catherine stared at it in disbelief. Amelia laughed nervously and claimed it must have ended up there by accident. Even she sounded unconvinced. Richard's face darkened. Lucas looked sick. For the first time, memories returned differently. Catherine remembered Evelyn sobbing and begging them to believe her. Richard remembered refusing to hear her explanation. Lucas remembered calling her pathetic. The truth hurt because it was undeniable. Upstairs, Evelyn sat alone in her room holding a tissue against another nosebleed. Her skin looked paler. Dark circles formed beneath her eyes. Yet for the first time in years, she felt something strange. Hope. Somewhere deep inside the mansion, Amelia stared at her reflection and felt something she had not experienced in a very long time. Fear. Chapter 5. A week after the necklace incident, Richard discovered an unopened envelope while clearing old files in his study. At first, he nearly threw it away. Then he saw Evelyn's name. The letter was dated 5 years ago and carried the seal of one of the country's most prestigious universities. His hands trembled as he opened it. "Congratulations. We are pleased to offer you a full scholarship." Richard read the sentence 3 times before the meaning sank in. Evelyn had been accepted. She had earned a full scholarship. Yet she never attended. Everyone believed she had failed. Amelia had comforted her, saying not everyone was meant for greatness. Richard remembered Evelyn crying in her room for days after the rejection she supposedly received. Only now there had never been a rejection. Someone had hidden the acceptance letter, someone inside the house. That evening, the family gathered in silence. Amelia's face turned pale when Richard placed the letter on the table. "Can you explain this?" he asked. Amelia's lips parted, but no words came out. For the first time, nobody rushed to protect her. Nobody defended her. Across the table, Evelyn looked at the letter and felt strangely numb. The future she once dreamed of had been stolen years ago. Nothing could return it now. A sharp pain stabbed through her chest. She excused herself and locked herself in the bathroom, coughing blood into the sink. The spell had taken another piece of her life. Chapter 6. Lucas found Evelyn sitting alone in the garden the following evening. She was reading beneath the old oak tree where she used to play as a child. For a moment he remembered the little sister who followed him everywhere, begging him to teach her how to ride a bicycle. Somewhere along the way he had stopped seeing her. "Why didn't you tell us?" he asked quietly. Evelyn looked up from her book. "Tell you what? About the scholarship?" A bitter smile touched her lips. "Would you have believed me?" The question struck harder than any accusation. Lucas opened his mouth, but no answer came, because they both knew the truth. If Amelia had denied it, he would have chosen Amelia, just like every other time. Evelyn closed her book. "I spent years trying to explain myself. Nobody listened." Lucas felt shame burn through him. He remembered every argument, every punishment, every time he watched his sister cry and assumed she deserved it. "I'm sorry," he whispered. The words sounded pathetic. Too small, too late. Evelyn simply nodded. She didn't forgive him. She didn't get angry either. That hurt even more. As Lucas walked away, he realized something terrifying. Evelyn had stopped expecting love from her family a long time ago. Chapter 7. Daniel's world began unraveling 2 days later. While replacing his phone, he recovered years of old messages from cloud storage. What he found made his blood run cold. Message after message from Evelyn had never reached him. Invitations, apologies, explanations, confessions. For years, he believed Evelyn ignored him whenever they argued. He believed she stopped trying. Yet the messages proved the opposite. She had always been the one reaching out. The messages stopped abruptly whenever Amelia was present. Daniel remembered countless occasions when Amelia borrowed his phone or offered to help manage his accounts. Suddenly, a horrible suspicion formed. He spent the entire night comparing dates. The pattern was undeniable. Someone had deleted Evelyn's messages before he could read them. Someone wanted them apart. The next morning, he confronted Amelia. "Did you touch my phone?" Amelia immediately burst into tears. Normally, that would have ended the conversation. Normally, he would have comforted her. But now all he saw was manipulation. For the first time, Daniel walked away while she cried. Across town, Evelyn sat in a doctor's office after collapsing from dizziness at work. The tests showed nothing unusual, yet her condition continued worsening. The doctor couldn't explain why she looked healthy while fading day by day. Chapter 8. The mansion grew quieter with every truth revealed. Nobody laughed as freely anymore. Nobody looked at Amelia the same way. Catherine spent nights staring at old family photographs. She noticed something she had never seen before. In almost every picture, Evelyn stood slightly apart from the others, smiling, trying, hoping, while everyone else crowded around Amelia. The realization shattered her heart. Evelyn had been asking for love all this time. Not money, not gifts, not attention, just love. Catherine found herself standing outside Evelyn's bedroom one night. She wanted to knock, wanted to apologize, wanted to explain. But what explanation could justify 15 years of neglect? Inside the room, Evelyn sat beside the black book. Another page had appeared. The revelation spell is active. Balance must be maintained. The greater the truth revealed, the greater the life consumed. Her hands shook. She finally understood. Every secret exposed was shortening her lifespan. Every revelation brought her closer to death. Downstairs, Amelia watched the family drifting away from her and clenched her fists. Fear was slowly turning into desperation, and desperate people were willing to do dangerous things. Chapter 9. Amelia had spent 15 years controlling the story. 15 years controlling how everyone saw Evelyn. 15 years ensuring she remained the beloved daughter while Evelyn became the problem child. Now everything was slipping away. The necklace, the scholarship, Daniel's messages, one by one. Old lies resurfaced like corpses rising from deep water. She couldn't understand how it was happening. Then one evening, she noticed Evelyn leaving the attic with a black leather book clutched tightly against her chest. Amelia followed her silently. That night, after everyone slept, she sneaked into Evelyn's room and stole the book. The moment her fingers touched the cover, an icy chill ran through her body. She opened it and immediately found the page describing the revelation spell. Her face turned white, blood, voice, consent, life in exchange for truth. Evelyn had cast the spell. Amelia's heart pounded. She rushed downstairs and threw the book into the fireplace. Flames engulfed the pages. Relief flooded her chest. Then the fire suddenly died. The book remained untouched. Not a single page burned. Amelia stumbled backward. Trembling, she grabbed the poker and struck the book. The metal bent. The book remained unharmed. A new sentence slowly appeared on the page. The contract has been sealed. Truth cannot be buried twice. Amelia screamed and dropped the book. Upstairs, Evelyn woke from a nightmare with blood on her lips. Chapter 10. The next revelation arrived 2 days later. Catherine was cleaning Amelia's room when she discovered an old storage box hidden beneath the bed. Inside were dozens of letters, every one of them addressed to Evelyn. Some were from friends, some were from teachers, some were invitations to events Evelyn never attended. The oldest letter dated back almost 10 years. Catherine's hands shook as she read them. Evelyn had been invited to competitions, award ceremonies, scholarship interviews, opportunities that could have changed her life. None of the letters had ever reached her. Amelia stood frozen in the doorway when Catherine confronted her. "Why?" Catherine whispered. For the first time, Amelia had no tears, no excuses, no performance, just silence. Catherine remembered every disappointment Evelyn endured, every dream she gave up, every time she told her daughter to stop blaming Amelia and accept reality. But reality had never been the problem. The lies were. Meanwhile, Evelyn sat in the hospital after collapsing again. The doctors looked concerned now. Her test results were changing. Her body was weakening far too quickly for someone her age. Yet no disease could explain it. As she left the hospital, her phone rang. It was Daniel. The first thing he said was, "Evelyn, how many times did I fail you?" For a moment, she couldn't answer. Then she smiled sadly and looked toward the setting sun. "I stopped counting years ago. Hundreds of miles away, storm clouds gathered over the city. And for the first time since casting the spell, Evelyn wondered if the truth would arrive before death did." Chapter 11. Daniel couldn't sleep after that conversation. Every memory felt poisoned. He remembered accusing Evelyn of ignoring him. He remembered canceling dates because Amelia needed him. He remembered watching Evelyn cry and assuming she was being dramatic. Now the recovered messages haunted him. She had loved him. She had fought for him. She had tried again and again while he chose someone else every single time. The realization crushed him. The next morning, he drove to Evelyn's apartment carrying flowers. She stared at them for several seconds before accepting them. "What are these for?" she asked. Daniel almost laughed at the question. How could he explain years of regret with a bouquet? "For every apology I should have made sooner." Evelyn looked away. The answer should have satisfied him, but it didn't. There was no anger in her eyes, no resentment, only exhaustion. It frightened him more than hatred ever could. As he left, he noticed blood on the tissue she tried to hide. His stomach dropped. Evelyn was getting worse. Chapter 12. That night, the spell revealed another secret. During a family dinner, Lucas suddenly remembered something he had forgotten for years. A charity fundraiser in high school. Evelyn had won first place in a regional science competition. The entire family was supposed to attend the award ceremony. At the last minute, Amelia claimed she was sick. Everyone stayed home with her. Nobody attended Evelyn's award presentation. She stood alone on stage holding her trophy while other students celebrated with their families. The memory hit Lucas like a truck. Then Catherine remembered it too. Richard remembered. One by one, details surfaced. Amelia hadn't been sick. She had been perfectly healthy the next morning. The family stared at her in stunned silence. Amelia burst into tears and ran from the room. This time, nobody followed. Nobody comforted her. Nobody told her everything would be okay. For the first time in 15 years, Amelia was alone. Upstairs in her room, she smashed a mirror in rage. Blood dripped from her hand as she stared at her reflection. Her beautiful mask was cracking, and deep inside, something ugly was beginning to show. Chapter 13. The first crack in Amelia's biggest lie appeared through someone nobody expected. An elderly woman arrived at the Hart mansion asking to speak with Richard. She had worked at the Riverside picnic site 15 years ago, the day Evelyn nearly drowned. Richard almost turned her away until she mentioned Amelia's name. The woman looked nervous as she explained she had recently recovered old photographs from storage. Most were ordinary pictures of families enjoying the park. One photograph, however, made Richard's blood run cold. In the background stood 8-year-old Evelyn near the riverbank. Beside her was Amelia. The timestamp showed the image was taken seconds before the accident. Richard stared at the photograph. Amelia's hands were extended toward Evelyn's back. It wasn't proof of anything. It could have been innocent. Yet the image planted a terrible seed of doubt. That evening, he showed it to Catherine and Lucas. Nobody spoke. Nobody wanted to say the thought aloud. Meanwhile, Evelyn sat alone in her apartment, staring at another fresh page in the witch's book. More truth awaits. More life shall be taken. Her hands trembled. The headaches were becoming unbearable. Sometimes she forgot simple things. Sometimes her vision blurred unexpectedly. The price was accelerating. For the first time since casting the spell, fear settled heavily in her heart. What if she died before learning the final truth herself? Chapter 14. Richard couldn't stop thinking about the photograph. For 15 years, he had repeated the same story. Amelia saved Evelyn. Amelia was a hero. Amelia deserved everything. Yet now every certainty felt fragile. Desperate for answers, he returned to the river where the accident happened. The place had changed over the years, but an old fisherman still remembered that day. At first, the man struggled to recall details. Then, his expression shifted. "I remember two girls," he said. "One fell into the water. The other was crying." Richard nodded impatiently. That was the story everyone knew. Then the fisherman frowned. "Strange thing is, I always thought the crying girl looked guilty." Richard's stomach twisted. The fisherman shrugged. "Could be my old memory playing tricks on me." But the damage was done. Richard drove home in silence. When he arrived, he found Amelia waiting in the living room. She looked pale, exhausted, afraid. "Dad," she whispered, "you still believe me, right?" The question struck him like a knife. 15 years ago, she would never have needed to ask. 15 years ago, he would have answered without hesitation. Now he couldn't. Amelia saw the uncertainty in his eyes and felt genuine panic for the first time. Upstairs, Evelyn collapsed beside her bed. Blood stained the floor beneath her. As darkness swallowed her vision, she thought of her family, not with hatred, not even with anger, only sadness. She had spent so many years wanting their love, and now that the truth was finally appearing, she wasn't sure she would live long enough to see what came next. Chapter 15. Evelyn woke in a hospital room. A nurse informed her that a neighbor had found her unconscious and called an ambulance. The doctors still couldn't explain her condition. Every test produced conflicting results. Her organs appeared healthy, yet her body was weakening rapidly. When the nurse left, Evelyn opened the witch's book. Another page had appeared overnight. The final truth is approaching. Balance must be maintained. She closed the book immediately. Across town, Daniel hired a private investigator. He needed answers. The investigator spent days digging through old school records, teacher statements, and forgotten complaints. What he uncovered horrified him. Amelia's name appeared repeatedly whenever trouble surrounded Evelyn. Missing projects, false rumors, anonymous reports. Every road led back to Amelia. By the end of the week, the investigator delivered a thick file to Daniel. As Daniel turned the pages, his face lost all color. This wasn't jealousy. This wasn't childish rivalry. This was a pattern. Years and years of calculated sabotage. And they had all helped her do it. Chapter 16. The investigator's report reached the entire Hart family. Catherine cried while reading it. Lucas punched a wall. Richard locked himself in his office for hours. The evidence was overwhelming. Every time Evelyn achieved something, Amelia found a way to ruin it. Every time Evelyn formed a friendship, rumors somehow spread. Every time Evelyn gained confidence, another disaster followed. The family finally understood the scale of their failure. They hadn't ignored one mistake. They had ignored hundreds. Amelia denied everything, but her tears no longer worked. Her excuses no longer worked. Her victim act no longer worked. Nobody believed her anymore. That night, Richard visited Evelyn in the hospital. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. He looked older than she remembered, smaller somehow. "I failed you," he finally said. Evelyn stared out the window. For years, she dreamed of hearing those words. Now they felt strangely empty. Yes, she answered softly. Richard flinched. There was no anger in her voice, only truth, and somehow that hurt more. As he left the room, Evelyn noticed a shadowy sentence forming on the next page of the witch's book. The river remembers. Soon so will everyone else. Chapter 17. The witness appeared 3 days later. She was a retired teacher named Mrs. Warren. When Daniel's investigator tracked her down, she hesitated before agreeing to speak. The accident happened 15 years ago. She had never forgotten it. Sitting across from the Hart family, she looked at the old photograph and immediately recognized the two girls. "I remember them," she said quietly. The room fell silent. Richard's hands clenched. Catherine stopped breathing. Amelia turned pale. Mrs. Warren explained that she had been walking near the river when she saw the girls arguing. She couldn't hear their words, but she remembered Evelyn stepping backward. She remembered Amelia reaching toward her. For years, she believed Amelia was trying to stop the fall. But now, looking at the photograph, doubt entered her mind. "The angle," she whispered. "It doesn't look like she was pulling her. It looks like she was pushing." Amelia shot to her feet. "That's a lie!" she screamed. The sudden outburst shocked everyone. Mrs. Warren flinched. Amelia realized her mistake and immediately burst into tears. Once upon a time, those tears would have ended the conversation. This time, nobody moved. Nobody comforted her. Nobody defended her. Across town, Evelyn sat alone in her hospital bed, watching rain slide down the window. Another nosebleed stained her blanket. Her hands trembled as she reached for a tissue. She was getting weaker, much weaker, yet somehow she found herself smiling. The truth was finally moving faster than the lies. Chapter 18. That night, Amelia couldn't sleep. Every shadow felt threatening. Every creak in the house sounded like judgment. For the first time in 15 years, she wasn't the beloved daughter. She wasn't the victim. She wasn't the hero. She was a suspect. The realization terrified her. Desperate, she returned to the attic and searched for the witch's book. If she could destroy the source, maybe she could stop the truth. But the book was gone. Evelyn had hidden it elsewhere. Amelia screamed in frustration and threw boxes across the attic. One shattered against the wall, revealing an old journal. Curious, she picked it up. It belonged to Catherine. Most entries were ordinary. Then Amelia found one written shortly after her adoption. Reading it made her blood run cold. "I hope Evelyn never feels replaced. She is my first daughter and always will be." Amelia stared at the sentence for a long time. Then she laughed bitterly. Liar. Because somewhere along the way, Catherine had replaced her. They all had. The journal slipped from Amelia's hands. Downstairs, Richard sat awake staring at old family albums. For the first time, he noticed a painful pattern. In every photograph, Evelyn was looking at her family, hoping for attention, hoping for approval, hoping for love, while everyone else was looking at Amelia. Richard buried his face in his hands and cried. It was the first time he had cried in years. And somewhere in the darkness of her hospital room, Evelyn suddenly coughed up blood, a terrible amount of blood. The spell was nearing its next payment. Chapter 19. The breakthrough came from an old videotape. Lucas discovered it while cleaning storage boxes in the garage. The tape had been recorded during the Riverside picnic 15 years earlier. His hands shook as he inserted it into an old player. The footage was grainy and incomplete, but it captured moments before the accident. Family members laughed. Children played. Then the camera briefly pointed toward the riverbank. Everyone crowded around the screen. Amelia stood beside Evelyn. The girls appeared to be arguing. Suddenly, Evelyn stumbled forward and vanished from view. The footage ended there. It wasn't enough to prove anything. but it destroyed the story they had believed for 15 years. Evelyn hadn't slipped while playing. The girls had been fighting. Richard felt physically ill. Catherine began sobbing. Lucas couldn't stop replaying the clip. Every time he watched it, the same question echoed in his mind. What if Amelia never saved Evelyn? What if everything they built their family on was a lie? Amelia saw the tape that evening. For the first time, genuine terror appeared in her eyes. Not fear of being disliked, not fear of losing attention, fear of being exposed. Chapter 20. The next morning, Amelia disappeared. Her room was empty. Her phone was gone. A single note remained behind. Don't look for me. The family searched everywhere. Catherine blamed herself. Richard blamed himself. Lucas blamed himself, yet deep down, they all knew the truth. Amelia hadn't run because she was innocent. She had run because she was cornered. While police searched for her, Daniel rushed to the hospital after receiving an urgent call. Evelyn's condition had worsened dramatically. Machines surrounded her bed. Doctors moved in and out of the room with grim expressions. When Daniel entered, his heart shattered. Evelyn looked fragile, smaller somehow, like a candle nearing the end of its wick. She smiled weakly when she saw him. "You look terrible," she joked. Daniel nearly cried. "You're still making jokes?" Evelyn shrugged. "Someone has to." Her voice was barely above a whisper. Daniel reached for her hand and felt how cold it had become. Panic gripped him. The truths were coming faster now. The lies were unraveling. Amelia was running. The family was finally waking up. But as Daniel sat beside Evelyn's bed, one horrifying thought refused to leave him. What if they were already too late? Chapter 21. Amelia was found 3 days later at a roadside motel several towns away. She looked exhausted. Gone was the elegant girl who effortlessly drew sympathy from everyone around her. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her hands shook constantly. When Richard arrived, she burst into tears and threw herself into his arms. For a brief moment, old instincts resurfaced. For a brief moment, he almost comforted her. Then he remembered Evelyn lying in a hospital bed. He remembered the scholarship letter, the hidden messages, the necklace, the years of manipulation. Slowly, Richard stepped back. The rejection hit Amelia harder than any accusation. "Dad, please," she whispered. "I was scared." Richard stared at her. "Scared of what?" Amelia's mouth opened and closed. She couldn't answer. Because they both knew the truth. She wasn't scared of being hurt. She was scared of being exposed. Meanwhile, another witness finally came forward, a former park employee who had been a teenager during the river accident. He remembered seeing the girls arguing near the water. At first, he stayed silent because everyone praised Amelia as a hero. Years passed. The story became fact. Nobody wanted the truth anymore. But when he saw news of the Hart family investigation, guilt drove him forward. Sitting before Richard and Catherine, he spoke the words that shattered 15 years of lies. Amelia pushed Evelyn. Silence followed. Catherine stopped breathing. Richard's face turned white. The witness lowered his head. "I saw it happen." Chapter 22. The confession destroyed the Hart family. Catherine collapsed. Lucas punched the wall until his knuckles split open. Richard sat frozen for nearly an hour. 15 years. 15 years of worshiping the wrong daughter. 15 years of punishing the victim while rewarding the person who caused everything. The witness explained that Amelia looked shocked after the push. She immediately jumped into the water after adults began running toward the river. By the time Evelyn was rescued, everyone believed Amelia had saved her. Nobody asked questions. Nobody investigated further. They simply accepted the story they wanted to hear. Amelia finally broke when confronted with a witness statement. Through tears and screams, she admitted the truth. She had pushed Evelyn during an argument. She never intended for things to go so far. She never intended for Evelyn to nearly drown. But after the adults praised her as a hero, she stayed silent. Then she realized how much attention and love the lie brought her. So she kept lying. One lie became 10. 10 became 100. Eventually, she couldn't stop. Catherine sobbed so hard she nearly fainted. Richard looked 20 years older. Lucas locked himself in his room. Across the city, Evelyn woke from another collapse. She could barely sit upright now. Yet when Daniel told her the truth had finally come out, she simply closed her eyes. Not because she was happy, not because she felt vindicated, but because she was tired, so very tired. And deep down, she knew the spell wasn't finished yet. Chapter 23. The public revelation came 2 days later. News spread rapidly through social media. The beloved adopted daughter who supposedly saved her sister's life had actually caused the accident. The story exploded across the internet. Reporters camped outside the Hart mansion. Former classmates came forward with stories of Amelia's manipulation. Teachers shared concerns they had ignored years earlier. Piece by piece, the image Amelia spent 15 years building collapsed. Yet none of it mattered to Evelyn anymore. She was dying. The doctors could no longer hide the truth. Her body was shutting down. No illness, no explanation, just steady decline. Daniel sat beside her bed every day. Lucas rarely left the hospital. Catherine cried whenever she saw her daughter sleeping. Richard couldn't even meet her eyes. The guilt was consuming them. Every apology sounded meaningless. Every regret arrived too late. One evening, Evelyn found Richard standing outside her room. "Can I come in?" he asked. She nodded. He sat beside her bed in silence before finally whispering, "I should have protected you." Evelyn looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled sadly. "Yes, you should have." Chapter 24. That night, Richard discovered the witch's book. It had fallen from Evelyn's bedside table while nurses changed her sheets. Curious, he opened it. At first he thought it was a strange journal. Then he found the revelation spell, the warning, the contract, the price. His blood ran cold. "The caster shall pay with their remaining years." Richard read the sentence again and again. Then he turned to the final pages. New words had appeared. "The truth has nearly been revealed. Payment shall soon be completed." His hands began shaking violently. For the first time, he understood why Evelyn was dying. Not disease, not bad luck. Sacrifice. She had traded her life for the truth. Richard rushed from the room and gathered the family. One by one, they read the pages. Catherine screamed. Lucas nearly dropped the book. Daniel refused to believe it. They searched desperately for a way to break the spell, but every page repeated the same message. The contract cannot be undone. The truth demanded a life, and that life was Evelyn's. Upstairs, unaware of their discovery, Evelyn stared out the hospital window. Snow had begun falling outside. The world looked peaceful, beautiful even. She placed a hand against the cold glass and wondered how much time she had left. Chapter 25. The days that followed became a nightmare. Richard contacted specialists from across the country. Catherine prayed until her voice became hoarse. Lucas searched every library, every archive, every mention of witchcraft he could find. Daniel refused to leave the hospital. None of it helped. Evelyn continued fading. Every morning, she seemed a little weaker. Every evening, she seemed a little paler. The doctors could only watch helplessly. One night, Catherine fell to her knees beside Evelyn's bed. "Please," she sobbed, "take my life instead." Evelyn stared at her mother in silence. For years, she dreamed of hearing words like these. For years, she wanted proof that she mattered. Yet now, with death standing at her shoulder, the victory felt hollow. "Mom," she whispered softly, "if you loved me this much, where were you before?" Catherine broke completely. She had no answer, because every excuse sounded pathetic beside 15 years of neglect. That night, another sentence appeared inside the witch's book. The final balance approaches. Richard read it and felt terror unlike anything he had ever known. For the first time, the powerful businessman who always solved problems realized there was nothing he could do. Money couldn't save Evelyn. Influence couldn't save Evelyn. Regret couldn't save Evelyn. The truth had been purchased. Now the debt was coming due. Chapter 26. Amelia learned about the spell 3 days later. Richard had forbidden anyone from seeing her, but she overheard enough conversations to uncover the truth. At first, she refused to believe it. Then she stole the book and read it herself. By the time she reached the final pages, her hands were shaking uncontrollably. Evelyn was dying because of her. Every exposed lie, every revealed secret, every truth had taken another piece of Evelyn's life. Amelia dropped the book and burst into tears. Not the fake tears she used for years. Real tears, horrified tears. She rushed to the hospital and demanded to see Evelyn. Security tried stopping her, but Daniel finally allowed her inside. The moment Amelia entered the room, she froze. Evelyn looked so small beneath the blankets, so fragile, nothing like the rival she spent years hating. "Why?" Amelia cried. "Why would you do this?" Evelyn looked at her quietly. "Because nobody believed me." The answer struck harder than a slap. Amelia collapsed beside the bed. "I never wanted this." Evelyn smiled sadly. "Maybe not, but you wanted everything else." For the first time in her life, Amelia had no defense, no manipulation, no lie, only guilt, crushing, unbearable guilt. Chapter 27. The next revelation shocked everyone. Hidden among the final pages of the witch's book was a forgotten history. The spell had been used before, generations ago. Every caster died. Every truth seeker paid the same price. But one passage caught Lucas's attention. Sometimes the greatest lie is not the crime itself, but the reason behind it. That sentence haunted him. He began digging deeper into Amelia's past. Adoption records, medical records, anything. Then he discovered something strange. Amelia's biological grandmother had been investigated decades ago for practicing forbidden rituals. Most people dismissed the stories as superstition. Yet the pattern felt familiar. Manipulation, obsession, control. Lucas brought the records to Richard. Neither man spoke for a long time. They weren't searching for excuses anymore. Nothing could excuse Amelia's actions. But they needed to understand how everything spiraled so far out of control. Meanwhile, Evelyn's condition worsened again. She could no longer walk without assistance. The nurses adjusted her medication daily. Daniel stayed by her side through every painful moment. Sometimes he caught her staring at the sunset through the hospital window. Whenever he asked what she was thinking, she always gave the same answer. "I wish we had more time." Chapter 28. Winter arrived early. Snow covered the city in white silence. Inside the hospital, the Hart family gathered around Evelyn almost every day. They told stories, shared memories, tried desperately to create the years they had stolen from themselves. Sometimes Evelyn laughed. Sometimes she cried. Most of the time, she simply listened. One evening, Lucas brought an old photo album. Together, they turned the pages: childhood birthdays, family vacations, school events. In every photograph, Evelyn noticed something she had never seen before. She was always looking at her family, always searching their faces, always hoping they were looking back. They rarely were. Lucas noticed it too. Tears slid down his face. "How did I never see it?" he whispered. Evelyn squeezed his hand weakly. "Because you weren't looking." The words weren't cruel. They were simply true. Later that night, after everyone left, Evelyn opened the witch's book one final time. A new message waited on the last page. The truth has been revealed. The final payment remains. Her heart skipped a beat. She closed the book and stared out at the falling snow. Somewhere deep inside, she knew exactly what those words meant. And for the first time since casting the spell, she felt afraid to see tomorrow. Chapter 29. The doctors delivered the news on a quiet Monday morning. Evelyn had days left, not weeks, not months, days. The room fell silent. Catherine broke first. Her knees gave out and she collapsed into a chair, sobbing uncontrollably. Lucas stared at the floor as though refusing to hear the words. Daniel turned away, unable to hide his tears. Richard simply stood there frozen. For years he had ignored Evelyn's pain. Now he would have given anything to take it away. But there was nothing left to bargain with. That evening, the family gathered around Evelyn's bed. Nobody wanted to leave. Nobody wanted to waste a single second. Catherine held her daughter's hand and begged through tears. Please stay. Please don't leave us. Lucas apologized for every cruel word he had ever spoken. Daniel confessed that losing her terrified him more than death itself. Richard couldn't even speak at first. When he finally found his voice, it cracked. I failed you, he whispered. Every single day I failed you. Evelyn listened quietly. The room felt heavy with regret, heavy with guilt, heavy with love that had arrived years too late. She smiled weakly. I know. Nobody slept that night. They were too afraid of waking up and finding her gone. Chapter 30. The storm arrived just before dawn. Rain struck the hospital windows while thunder rolled across the sky. Inside the room, alarms suddenly began sounding. Nurses rushed in, doctors followed. The family was pushed aside as medical staff fought desperately to stabilize Evelyn. Through the chaos, she opened her eyes one last time. Her vision was fading, her heartbeat was slowing. Yet she could still hear them. Her mother crying, her brother begging, Daniel praying, Richard repeating her name again and again. For the first time in 15 years, nobody was calling for Amelia. Nobody was looking at anyone else. They were looking at her, only her. The daughter they forgot, the daughter they blamed, the daughter they abandoned. Evelyn felt tears gather in her eyes, not because she was angry, not because she hated them, but because this was all she had ever wanted. To be seen, to be loved, to matter. Catherine fell beside the bed. Please, Evelyn, please. Daniel gripped her hand. Lucas couldn't stop apologizing. Richard finally broke completely. The proud man who never cried dropped to his knees. Take my life, he begged. Please, take mine instead. Evelyn smiled, a peaceful smile, a genuine smile. Then she whispered her final words. The truth was worth it. The heart monitor released one long, endless tone. The room fell silent, and Evelyn Hart was gone. Epilogue. The years passed, but the Hart family never recovered. Amelia confessed to everything and disappeared from public life. Some said she moved away. Others said she spent years in psychiatric care. Nobody cared enough to know for certain. Daniel never married. Every year on Evelyn's birthday, he brought flowers to her grave and sat there until sunset. Lucas left the family business and devoted his life to helping neglected children. Catherine visited the cemetery every week without fail. Sometimes she spoke to the headstone for hours. Sometimes she simply cried. Richard aged rapidly. The guilt never left him. Neither did the memories. On a snowy winter afternoon, 10 years after Evelyn's death, he stood before her grave holding white lilies. His hands trembled with age. The stone was simple. Evelyn Hart, beloved daughter, loved too late. Richard knelt before the grave. Snow gathered on his shoulders. Tears blurred his vision. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry, my daughter. The wind carried his words away. No answer came, none ever would, because some truths arrive too late. Some wounds never heal, and some prices are far too high. The end. Thank you for listening to today's story. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this story, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to support the channel. It really helps me create more magical stories for you. Leave a comment below and send some love if you'd like to hear more stories like this. Until next time, take care, keep dreaming, and I'll see you in the next magical adventure. Bye bye, witches and wizards.